A traumatic experience at age 14 started Errol Gibbs on a search for meaning and purpose in life. Today, he's a technical engineer, a professional consultant, a researcher, writer, international motivational speaker, and co-author of 5 Foundations of Human Development, which is the culmination of his findings after a lifelong pursuit for answers to some of life's most basic and challenging questions. Errol, welcome.
Welcome. Thank
Great
you.
to have you here.
Thank you, Ron, for allowing me to be here.
Well, Errol, I want to start going back a bit in your story to growing up in Trinidad and Tobago and,
sure.
and your family and kind of your early days of experience. Just share that for a moment.
Yeah, growing up in Trinidad and Tobago was quite a good experience. If I had to repeat it, I'd do it again. The experience with my dad is perhaps the most poignant experience. I was 14 years old. I was close to him. He was a bit of a, he was working on a prototype of a gas burning stove. And there was an accident that occurred. A lot of gas spilled on him, and he was set ablaze from his neck right down to his feet, actually. It was quite traumatic. What I found...
Were you there at the time?
Yes, I was in close proximity of him at the time. What I found quite interesting in that experience is that he was quite calm, yet he was totally ablaze. But I know he called my mom and asked, what should I do? He was a bit in shock, so she said to just drop on the ground and roll. I can't say for certain how he actually got extinguished, but I know eventually it happened, and he called for a pair of pants, and he called for a shirt, he called for his keys. We were fortunate at that time, in the 50s, that we were one of the few families with a car. So that was good, and he actually called for the keys, and I jumped in the car with him. I was on the passenger side, and he drove to the hospital.
He drove himself
yeah, absolutely.
In that condition? In
that condition.
Wow.
That was quite an interesting thing. It was about 2.5 miles. He pulled into the hospital, and he collapsed. I rushed out and started shouting for folks to come out and take care of him. Unfortunately, the 50s, there weren't a burn unit, no trauma teams, no EMS services to get him. So I guess somehow his instinct clicked in that he should get himself to the hospital. Briefly, I can't say exactly what happened or how I got back home, but I know word went out to the neighborhood, and they came with my mom to see him. My mom had promised her when she came back later in the night that she'll bring all the kids to see him at the hospital.
How many children at that point?
It was 9 of us.
9 of you.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. So you can imagine what was happening at the home.
Yes.
Folks are all screaming, and the neighbors are coming over. Everyone is terrified. Unfortunately, we did not get to talk to him. He passed within 24 hours.
Oh.
Yeah.
So as a 14-year-old boy, that must have had quite an impact on you.
Yeah, it had a significant impact on me in particular, because he drove me to school every morning. So the succeeding years walking to school, 2.5 miles, was a constant reminder of something missing in my life. Yeah. So that to me was quite traumatic. But the long term was much more positive in that, because he was a very ambitious person, a very ambitious man, and I knew he would have had high ambitions for us. It turned out that it helped me to develop tenacity and courage, and more determined to become someone who I think he would be proud of. Yeah.
And your mother certainly had that kind of determination as well, raising 9 children then on her own. I think we have a photo of your mother and father.
Mom, yeah, that's right.
So there they are.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us about your mom.
She was an incredible lady. I can't say, it's a bit of a, it's difficult for me to say that she actually was coping with the situation. She had to cope with it, but I know it was quite difficult for her. And even now, I still think that there's some long-term psychological effects of what transpired.
She's 95 now.
She's 95 now, and she lives in Scarborough in a nursing home. She's very coherent. We have great discussions. Only now I think she's starting to be a little bit incoherent. But it was a tremendous struggle for her, and a lot of I would say, the manifestation of that struggle. For somehow I thought I had the brunt of most of her frustrations. For some reason, I believe so, because I was somewhere in the middle, and pretty distraught by the whole situation and probably maybe most significantly affected by it. So I know there were times when of course, that was an era when you get spanking for doing wrong things. So I got a fair share of that. It didn't leave a mark on me of any, sort, because it's your mother and you have respect for your parents and you know that they're doing the best for you. Yeah.
Now, that started you really on a search, asking some very deep questions and searching for answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Having spent some time writing, I would say a lot of the underpinnings of my work, the work wasn't, I would say, it wasn't a result of the incident, but the incident certainly contributed to it in some way. Mm-hmm. But I am quite certain that it started my path to discovery. I know that I got involved even with my Hindu friend, and we started reading and researching together, Krishnamurti, Mahatma Gandhi, trying to really find out what is the purpose of life. How do young people in a situation that I was in cope, in those sort of situations? What will be my future? Is there a future? Mm-hmm. When you're young and you're in the island or somewhere in the developing world, all you see around you is that world, and you have no concept of where your life would take you. But somehow, deep inside of me, I knew that there had to be something bigger and something better. And I think it's because I knew my dad, if he was alive, that would be an eventuality, and there wouldn't be that great concern. So it became internalized, so it's no longer my dad motivating. I had to become motivated myself, yeah.
Now, in your mid-20s, you came to Canada.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at what point was it that you really found the answers you were searching for? It had to be when I actually started working. I've always had an interest in things that are bigger than myself, okay? Because I knew when I was a young fellow, I used to go down to the power plant. I was always interested in how these things work and how do we as human beings, where do we get this great intelligence to make these things happen? And I believe it or not, part of it may have come from working in the Pickering nuclear facilities, trying to understand the great complexity and where this complex mind come from to build, and to create these kinds of entities. And for that reason, I started to believe three things, more specifically, that there are three levels of intelligence. There's artificial intelligence, which is machines, human intelligence, which is man, which I call creative intelligence, and then we have spiritual intelligence, which I call creation intelligence. And literally this idea of this concept of intelligence has followed me throughout my life, and I continue to observe the phenomena of life from that perspective, or from that prism. Now, you, in pulling together this quite a large volume here,
yeah.
Over the last 10 years,
yeah,
with your co-author, you start off by talking about some initial kind of preeminent foundations you talk about, like right. Who is God, who is Jesus Christ, what is the church, what is the Holy Bible, who is a Christian. Why did you want to start with such those basics?
I started with, we had to start with a preeminent foundation because it validates and it gives the hope and the reason for writing the 5 foundations of human development. We could not write 5 foundations of human development without understanding the preeminent foundation. Mm-hmm. It would be somewhat presumptuous, I would think. So we had to provide the reader with the basis upon which we have, derived this title and this search. Yeah. Mm. Mm-hmm.
Now, in our limited time, we can't go into too much of this large volume here.
Certainly.
But maybe explain what is the kind of the premise of the book and why you felt so compelled to write this.
Okay. First and foremost, I haven't had a difficult life, and at the stage when we were writing, I was at the peak in terms of my profession. Incredible income and traveling across America as a project management consultant, doing process designs and what have you. And I've always been concerned about other young people who may have had a similar life like mine and may have ended up in very, very horrible situations, maybe in prisons or what have you. And the question was, how do we truly actualize ourselves as human beings? And it came to me one night in my rest that 5 foundations of human development, meaning that we as human beings should grow and develop on 5 foundations or 5 principles, which is the spiritual, the moral, the social, the intellectual, and the physical. And we thought long and hard about other areas or disciplines or thoughts. Could it be 10 foundations? Could it be 15? We found that it didn't matter what we talk about or where we looked. It was all comprehended in these 5 foundations. So the 5 foundations is really a perfect perspective about how we should develop ourselves. But beyond that, the other foundation upon which the book is based is, we call it 5 principles upon which human survival rests. And we say it's to worship God, serve humanity, care for the family, obey authority, and manage creation. So this also helps to form the premise around the book. Yeah.
Well, there is a lot packed in here.
Absolutely.
We could only unpack a very little bit in this interview, but thank you, and congratulations on the culmination of these 10 years of research and work in the book once again. And it's available on our e-store. We'll have that information come up. The 5 Foundations of Human Development by Errol Gibbs and Philip Gray. And you can call 1-800-265-3100 on our Crossroads e-store. You can order it online as well at crossroads.ca, and you can purchase your copy. And Errol, thank you so much for coming by and for sharing some of your life and some of your life's work in this. God bless you as you continue on to share the truth God has given you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
God bless you. Thank you.